Hey everyone, welcome to At the Glass podcast. I'm your host, Mark. I'm here with my co-host, George the Greek. We're going to do a little college football talk this week for week 14. A lot on the line this week. Don't you say, George?
Yeah, I mean, look, what a great Tuesday to kick off Thanksgiving week. We have the college football committee show today, with the potential playoff teams. We have Duke and Kansas basketball tonight. We have the Maui Invitational, and then we're going to roll into Thanksgiving Day with all these great NFL games, and then it's rivalry week, presumably last regular season game for most teams, and it's usually against their rivals. So I think it's a great kickoff to the week. I'm really glad we were able to do a show today and kick off the week.
Absolutely, George. As we know, here at the Glass, we as George would say, let's get involved. I say we be sipping or clocking in. As we mentioned before, I'm starting off with a beer from Breckenridge Brewery, which is one of my wife's favorite breweries. I'm drinking their Christmas ale. It's abundance of carefully roasted malts, creates notes of caramel and chocolate, with the hops contribute a spicy quality for a balanced and clean finish. It's smooth, easy drinking for me. It's on the dark side of color, malty, not hoppy, and strong, not a session. So it comes in at 7.1% ABV. It's only out during right now. So if you like Christmas ales, Breckenridge does a very tasty Christmas ale. George, what are you involved with?
Well, hey, that's nice, Mark. Look at you. I love it. Well, I'm trying to class up the joint today a little bit. I'm drinking a glass of white wine. Right. I'm drinking a glass of white wine, some Pinot Grigio, Bella Sera Pinot Grigio. It's light, it's crisp, definitely a good starter drink for the evening. And because it's going to be a long evening, hey, got to start easy, and we're gonna keep going.
Absolutely. Before we dive into college football, just remember, if you got any questions or feel like giving a shout, go ahead and do so at the Glass. Podcast at gmail.com. That is at the Glass podcast at gmail.com. So getting underway, George, we had some quite a bit of upsets over the weekend that definitely have shaken up the playoff caliber, wouldn't you say?
Well, we have had some we've had some upsets to affect the playoffs. But before we get started, I just like to get started with this just real quickly.
Put your earplugs in.
Go Irish!
All right. Well, sorry you had to hear that again, people. It's a thing for him. It what makes him happy.
It makes George smile. It makes George smile.
That can be taken many ways. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So we're looking at it. So last week, like I said, some upsets did occur. We'll start with the Bama losing OU, and that wasn't a close one. That was OU played football for the first time this year and took it to Alabama. They were in Norman, but as you know, OU has not played well at all this year. Fired their OC a couple weeks ago. By winning, they are bowl eligible now. But Bama had a lot on the line. You would think they would have come out to play, knowing that they had a good shot at making the playoffs.
Well, yeah. I mean, hey, look. Boomer, Sooner. I mean, good on them. They really needed a statement win to basically save their season this year, because this year has definitely been a disappointment, and I really hope Venables gets it right over there, because I think he's a great coach. And look, is it DeBerg? Am I saying his name right? Head coach at Alabama. It's so hard to follow in the footsteps of a legend, or if not the legend, the best of all time. I think he's going to get it right at Alabama. It didn't fall for him this year, but I wouldn't fall asleep on them for years to come. But yeah, Oklahoma came out, and then how about my Kansas Jayhawks just rising from the dead, what looked like a lost season, and now they're one game away from qualifying for a bowl game, and they just knocked out Colorado from a possible Big 12 championship game which could have landed them in the playoffs, even though they were ranked at the time number 16. So, hats off to the Jayhawks, and there was many more.
Well, I think if I saw correctly, your Jayhawks have won 3 games in a row, and they all have been against ranked teams. So good on them. When they started off having a promising year last year, did well, and then came out kind of sluggish, but they got it going. Like you said, they can knock off Baylor this upcoming week. They become bowl eligible, and you can't hang your hat up without saying, let's go bowling for those seniors.
Yeah, and then, Florida won. What did they knock off Ole Miss?
Yeah, they knocked off Ole Miss, which basically knocked Ole Miss out, I believe, out of the playoffs, more than likely, because that gives them 3 losses on the season. And right for Florida, getting their season kind of back on the right track. I know there was ifs of maybe firing Billy Bayou, not really his last name, but that is his nickname because he came from Louisiana. But he got it going. They have a great freshman quarterback that looks promising for the Gators next year if they all stay healthy and they don't lose a lot of people in the portal. So, but good for Gators, knocking off Ole Miss. Like you said, Colorado losing. The other one was who would have thought Arizona State, after their second year with their new coach, come in knocking off BYU this past week. So now they are in the driver's seat. As long as they win Saturday, they're in the Big 12 championship game. And they will get, more than likely, I believe it's going to be BYU. They have a chance to play Colorado, but Colorado needs some help, I believe, to get in. So,
in all likelihood, I think it's going to be BYU. And who would have thought going into the year we'd be looking at Arizona State playing BYU for the Big 12 championship? I personally, at the beginning of the year, not to be, a homer, but the way the Jayhawks played last year and the way they finished the year, and with so many returners coming back, I truly thought the Jayhawks were going to run away with this Big 12 this year. I thought this was their year to do it. It didn't happen that way. Like the Arizona States of the world, the BYUs, Colorado. And I was really happy to see Coach Prime and the Buffaloes kind of step up, because they had a lot of hype the first year. They jumped out to a quick start and then they fell apart, and then people started kind of viewing them like, their bark's a lot louder than their bite, and people started discounting them. And they've had a great year this year. They really have. But to be at the big boy table, the elite table in college football, it does take a lot. And if he does continue to stay at Colorado, I think he'll get them there. But the Big 12 has definitely been interesting. And how about Oklahoma State? Mike Gundy always wins 10 games a year. You would have thought they'd be in the mix somewhere. And, it's been awful for them.
Yeah. I thought they'd at least be in contention to get to the Big 12 conference championship. But who would have thought they have yet to win a conference game this year? Yeah, they have yet to win a conference game this year.
Wow. I did not know that.
Yeah, they have yet to win. Good luck to them this week, because they are playing Colorado, and Colorado's going to come out and play their hearts out. That way they did everything they can. Like I said, they still need some pieces to fall in place. I believe they need Iowa State to lose or BYU to lose again, but BYU is playing U of H. So they need some pieces to fall in order to get into the conference championship game for the Buffaloes. So what you got?
Well, in another story, and this was the biggest story going into the weekend, how about the Ohio State Buckeyes rolling Indiana? A lot of people, myself included, started buying into what Indiana's doing. It's been a great story, but the Buckeyes showed why they're one of the big boys at the big boy table, in a convincing win, So I hope Indiana licks her wounds and gets back to work and finishes what otherwise has been a great season for them. People will talk about their schedule or whatnot, but, hey, you have to start somewhere. And the Hoosiers have started somewhere, and they're looking good, and they just signed their coach to an extension. And I think the future's bright in Bloomington.
Absolutely. I'm looking up right now. I believe it's his first year there at Indiana, if I'm not mistaken. He came from James Madison, did a phenomenal job there at James Madison when they're FBS before they jumped up, or excuse me, FCS before they jumped up to FBS, and did an incredible job there. And now he's at Indiana, and look at him. He had him going all season till 10-0 until they got their first loss. So that was their first really true test of the season, and it stinks it was near the end of the season. So even though it was their first loss, but it wasn't close at all for them against the Buckeyes.
Well, and look at job security. You go from James Madison to 1 year in Bloomington, and then you sign this 7-year, just nice, massive contract. It goes to show you how committed the Hoosiers are to upgrading their football. They have new facilities. They've upgraded the stadium. They have the coach in place. It's a lot of like what Kansas is doing as well. And it's interesting how 2 basketball schools are doing this now. Kansas has needed forever to upgrade their facilities. They're going to have a brand new stadium going into next year, which these seniors that helped them through last year and this year, and they're walking out of the program really with their fingerprints on, hey, we might have brought this university and this program to the next level, and hopefully they could compete in college football playoffs in years to come. But definitely interesting stories. This past weekend was a lot of fun, and I think this weekend's even going to be more fun. So, look out.
Yeah, a lot riding on this upcoming weekend. To finish out this past weekend, let's talk about your Irish real quick. They hosted Army in your whatever you want to call your awesome Yankee Stadium, your cathedral, your mecca of baseball land.
It's let's have a little bit of respect. It's the cathedral of baseball. Everyone knows that. But yes, Notre Dame Shamrock Series game, they played Army, and I can't say enough about the showing. I like how Marcus Friedman had them prepared for the game. He told them all week in practice, this isn't Navy 2.0. These guys are a lot more physical. They run a lot more different, I don't want to say gimmicky plays, but they do run some plays that can kind of keep you off balance when you only have a week to prepare for them. And the Irish's defense just looked absolutely the part, the way they have been all year. And let's not look now. Notre Dame, for a season, and this is under first-year offensive coordinator Demrock, they're averaging, I want to say, between 45, 47 points per game. When was the last time Notre Dame was considered one of the top offensive juggernauts in the country, and they're only giving up, I want to say, about 11 points a game? So offensively, defensively, they've been getting it done. Yes, everyone's going to jump on my ass about, they lost to Northern Illinois week 2, and I get it. And it stings. It still stings. But maybe that's what they've needed to really catapult themselves into the season that they're having, and quite frankly, what a lot of us had expected. But let me tell you one thing about Notre Dame. You notice I mentioned the offensive game and the defensive game. Our special teams game, our punting, our kicking, punting is good, but our field goal kicker, we're in trouble right now. He's definitely a solid kicker, but he did suffer a groin injury earlier in the year, never fully recovered from it, and since then, field goals is not our thing. That's why we're one of the leading teams in the country in fourth down conversions, because we almost feel like we have to go for it because we know we have an amazing defense. But if we can handle our business this Saturday in Southern California, when you get into these playoffs, you're going to be in these close games against these big teams where you will need your field goal kickers. So I'm really hoping he's getting some rest. I'm hoping he's in the physical therapy department on campus and just getting as healthy as he possibly can for what could be potentially a run in these college football playoffs. But again, we still have to get through the Trojans of Southern California, which is a rivalry game, and it's always going to be tough. So we're definitely not looking past that.
Yeah, for your Irish. Looking at their schedule, like you said, besides the 2-point loss to Northern Illinois, their next closest win by margin was a touchdown. That was against Louisville. After that, every other opponent besides Notre Dame or Texas A&M was a 10-point win. They have, like you said, blown out everyone else. Hasn't been even close. 49-7 Stanford, 31-13 Georgia Tech, 51-14 to Navy when Navy was ranked at the time because they were still undefeated. We know Florida State was hot garbage this year, but they blew them out, took care of business. So they've been taking care of business from basically after Northern Illinois' little step back game. So, like I said, don't want to step back this weekend. Want to keep the foot on the pedal and just keep moving along to secure that spot into the playoffs.
Well, remember, and I'm going to bring this up now because I know here shortly we're going to go into the potential college football playoffs. Notre Dame doesn't have a conference championship game because they're independent. So this game against USC is uber important in terms of even style points. So not only do they have to win, which is going to be hard enough, because in a way this is going to be USC's, I don't want to say Super Bowl, but they've had a bad year. They have had high expectations with Lincoln Riley being there. They're playing their rival. They could really derail Notre Dame's season with a win, and it's at home in LA. So this is not a gimme game for the Irish at all. They really are going to have to go in there and be sharp.
Yep. Don't want to come in thinking you got it in the bag and just slack off, that's for sure. To round out this past week, Boise State squeaked by Wyoming just to keep their playoff hopes alive. Let's see, the Longhorns took care of Kentucky, so they're still good. Penn State somehow got it together to squeak by Minnesota, 26-25. They almost lost their season right there. And like I said, Arizona State knocked out BYU, which really is an upset, just helps Arizona State secure their spot. Georgia took care of UMass, and Miami took care of Wake Forest. Ole Miss losing to Florida, like we discussed. SMU won their game, so they're in the ACC championship game. They'll either take on Miami or Clemson. Miami wins their end due to higher ranking, I believe, because Miami and Clemson didn't play each other, but they both have a conference loss, so Miami, being the higher ranked team, will get in the play. SMU going with that. They win Saturday.
Yeah, the winner of the ACC championship game, they're going to be in the playoff. Obviously, the loser, I think, is going to be out. I know this show today isn't really, it wasn't scheduled or planned to talk about coaches on the hot seat or anything. But what I do have to ask really quick before we dive into the playoff is, what's going on at LSU with Brian Kelly? I've only read reports, but from what I've read, I know Brian Kelly could be rough on his players from his days at Notre Dame. I witnessed it firsthand. But then for another player to come to the aid of one that he's yelling at to yell at the coach, and it all got caught on camera. And then I think from what the article I read said, Brian Kelly turned and looked towards a camera, and the camera immediately kind of just shifted angles. This was clearly caught on national television, and one has to wonder, I never thought he was a good fit at LSU. He had no LSU ties. He had no SEC ties, even though he probably was the hottest coach available at the time. So I get why they went to get him. But is Brian Kelly losing his locker room?
I mean, I think everyone's just frustrated going with the how well Brian Kelly's done in his career of coaching, coming up from at Cincinnati before going to Notre Dame, and having the success he did at Notre Dame with what guidelines he has to follow for school-wise, for academics and stuff like that. So he got great players at Notre Dame. I'm not taking that away, but people thought, okay, look at what he did at Notre Dame. Well, if he can take that to LSU and basically pick anyone he almost really wanted to, people basically I know LSU wants to win a national championship every year like all the other big schools do, and I think just they're getting frustrated with the lack of results that he's putting out there right now, and just this season has not gone the way that they intended to go, losing especially 3 games in a row before beating Vandy this past weekend. But They're not going to do anything this season with him just because his buyout is astronomical, and so they're probably going to have to see how next year goes before LSU really considers looking at going a different route from Brian Kelly.
And it goes to show you, a head coaches are important, folks. Absolutely, they are. Obviously they can change a program immediately. You look at any stop Nick Saban went to, he won. A lot of people do that, but you're really only as good as your assistants. Now, this is interesting to know. Brian Kelly wanted Freeman to go down there with him. Freeman said, hey, let me talk it over with my wife. 2 days later, he gets a call from the athletic director at Notre Dame. All of a sudden, he's the head coach at Notre Dame. So Brian Kelly couldn't take his defensive coordinator down with him. He had Mike Demrock go with him. Stays for, I think, a year or two, gets Jalen Daniels to the Heisman table, but then leaves LSU, goes to Notre Dame. You see with that OC what Notre Dame's been able to do this year. You see what LSU's doing now without him there. You see what I mean? And it's just interesting because Brian Kelly is getting top 6, top 10 recruiting classes. So, again, his buyout is huge. I don't see him going anywhere, and I only wish the best for him. But I really, truly, my heart of hearts, hope he's not losing his locker room or losing his team, because I know he's a great coach. And with the Fighting Irish, look, he brought Notre Dame back to relevance. When he took over, with the other coaches we had, we had a couple of BCS years here and there. We had the Brady Quinn years, the Charlie Weiss years, we did well from time to time, but we weren't a consistent program. And Brian Kelly did bring that back. And during Brian Kelly's tenure, especially I want to say the last 5 to 7 years, if you weren't a team named Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, or Oklahoma, the winningest team was Notre Dame. So he was at the table with all those dudes. He just could never really break through. So he definitely is a great coach. And he did go to a national championship game. So really the only thing he has not accomplished in his college football head coaching career is win a natty. So I really hope the best for Brian Kelly. I really do.
Didn't he go to the national championship his first year at Notre Dame?
He went in his third year.
Okay.
With Manti Te'o, and I hate to say this, got embarrassed by Alabama. Alabama rolled them.
Yeah, I knew they played Alabama. I couldn't remember if that was his first year at Notre Dame doing that. And then, of course, they looked like they were playing against, or I guess a better way to put it is it was a no-show like Manti Te'o's girlfriend, right? Everyone remembers that. So for Brian Kelly, I know it's been it's just a lot of frustration there in Death Valley, Baton Rouge for the Tiger fans there. To go with it, like I said, he's offense coordinator back at Notre Dame now. That was at LSU. Their offense coordinator this year is Joe Sloan, has been with Brian Kelly since Brian Kelly took over in 2022. And to look at Freeman, the players spoke. They wanted him to be the next head coach. And so to go say, it has to say, just because you have a great resume does not mean it's always going to be a good transition and fit right away at the next school you go to. And that's not necessarily Brian Kelly's fault. That's just LSU. An example is like, oh, well, he's done well here and here. He could replicate that here. But now you look at it, LSU is also in the SEC, going against all the other top programs. Where Notre Dame, not knocking, but being independent, it's just a tougher road sometimes going that route. But I think it's also culture fit, having a coach that the players back and are excited to play for. So like Notre Dame was like, the players like, we want Freeman, like hands down. And him staying, there's always going to be growing pains the first or 2 years at a program when a coach comes in, because you got to get their players are wanting, people are going to leave because the other head coach left, because that's who they were there to play for, not necessarily the associate coach. But Freeman has done a phenomenal job at Notre Dame. It's going to be fun watching him play the rest of this season and the future seasons to come.
And let me make this very clear. This isn't the bagging on Brian Kelly show right now. It's not. We're about to dive into the playoffs, but I'm one of those guys that when it comes to head coaching, money talks, I get it. People are going to want to go where they could best take care of their families long term. And LSU showed up with the bag. But Freeman matched Notre Dame. He was already there as a DC. He had been a DC, I believe, at Purdue. I believe he might have been at Cincinnati. He played his college ball days at Ohio State while he was recruited by Notre Dame. And it's interesting to note, he almost did go to Notre Dame as a college football player. So Marcus knows the Northern Midwest. He's a Northern Midwest guy. That ended up being a good fit for him. Lincoln Riley going out to Southern Cal, I wasn't 100% sure on that. Lincoln Riley, I believe he's from the Austin area. Going up to Oklahoma is not really a stretch, but he was doing well at Oklahoma. I didn't know how he was going to fit into the culture in Southern Cal. The only reason I thought he might fit in is because of his fun flying offense, because they like that over there, but it hasn't really seemed to transform or happen yet. And again, Brian Kelly, was it Central Michigan originally, or Eastern Michigan or something like that? I believe he's an Irish guy from Boston, I believe, or Massachusetts. And I know he had a lot of his coaching career kind of from that Northern Midwest area. So all of a sudden when his name gets mentioned with Baton Rouge, Louisiana, I'm like, what does he know about the South? So sometimes I think in college football, you need a guy that knows the recruiting in the area, knows coaches and scouts in the area, knows the high school coaches in the area. Even back to the days when Texas hired Charlie Strong, from Louisville. Charlie Strong was a hell of a coach. Not like he forgot how to coach, but he had zero ties to Texas, zero ties to the recruiting in the area. Notice it didn't work very, very quickly. So again, I wish the best for Brian Kelly, and I hope he turns it around, but I don't know. We have some college football playoffs to talk about.
Yeah, we're about to do that. I'm going to wrap that up with. So Freeman, real quick, he came from Cincinnati. He was at Purdue for a couple seasons, then went to Cincinnati to be the defense coordinator, Notre Dame in 21 for 1 year, and then became the head coach at Notre Dame.
Northern Midwest.
Yes, talking about region still, yes. Lincoln Riley, long story short, he left OU because he wants the easy way out into the playoffs. He never wanted to play anyone tough or anything like that. Went to USC, got paid big money, and it's not working out well for him there. He has like the same equivalent record as the previous coach to the same amount of games. So, yeah, fun offense to watch. He's looking not to be the best head coach in general. That's just me. But so going to this week in playoffs. So as we're waiting for the committee show to start, which is on right now, we'll look at the AP polls that came out as well. So we'll start with, the
selection show is about to come on in about 2 minutes. I don't think it's going to be that much different. I'm very curious to see where they rank. Really, a lot of the teams about 8 through 12 is what I'm very curious to see. And what a lot of people need to realize, because what we're going to do, just so everyone knows, we're going to break when the selection show comes on. And we're going to watch it, and then we're going to jump back on, and we're going to basically diagnose what they came back with. But what is so important for everyone to know, because people get confused because they're just like, well, wait, my team is ranked here, but why are we here? The top 4 teams that get buys are from the Power 5 conferences, and they are the conference winners, meaning if they win their conference championship. So even though, for example, a team like Ohio State right now is ranked number 2, if the Big Ten championship happened tomorrow and let's say Oregon wins, even though Ohio State's ranked number 2 in the country, they're an at-large team. Right now, Penn State's ranked number 4. They're an at-large team because they're behind Oregon and Ohio State. Notre Dame, my team, which I'm always jockeying for them to be higher, Notre Dame could be ranked number 1 in the country, but since they're not in a conference, they're independent, they would always be an at-large team. So you're going to see teams in the top 4 that get byes that are ranked much, much further back in the rankings. So it's important for everyone to know that, and we're obviously going to announce a lot of this here soon.
For sure. Before we take a quick break, I'll go ahead and just say what the top 12 AP has, and then when the selection comes out, we'll see if that matches up or what changed, and then we'll see. We'll dive in, like I said, for the playoffs, who those opponents have this week, and see who was in the conference championship, and from there, I got a little surprise for you, Georgie. You'll appreciate. So, real quick, AP has Oregon 1, Ohio State 2, Texas 3, Penn State 4, Notre Dame 5, Georgia 6, Tennessee 7, Miami 8, SMU 9, Indiana 10, Boise State 11, and Clemson at number 12. So that's your top 12 on the AP. So let's see if the committee is the same, close, or has a couple teams in and out or flipped around within those 12. So just stay tuned, and we'll get back to you here shortly.
See you guys soon.
And we're back here at the Glass Podcast. The rankings came out from the College Football Committee. We're still very much involved. I have transitioned to St. Arnold's Christmas sale. It's a little bit more on the hoppy side to me on my taste buds than the Breckenridge Christmas sale. George is over here drinking some, what was it called?
Gentleman's Jack. Gentleman's Jack and Diet Coke.
Is it treating you very gentlemanly?
Well, I told you earlier I was trying to class up the joint with my wine, but yeah, now it's starting to come off the rails a little bit, and rightfully so. We had the playoff committee show. We have nothing but playoff football to talk to you guys about, and why not get a little crazy about this because it's awesome.
Definitely. All right. So, like I said, the playoff committee came out. They had Oregon at number 1, Ohio State's number 2. Number 3 was
Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame, Miami, Georgia, Tennessee, SMU, Indiana, Boise State, Arizona State. First team out, Clemson. Second team out, Alabama. Now, again, I keep reiterating this, and I keep saying this every time we talk about the college football playoff. It does not matter where you're ranked, because what happens is the top 5 conference winners are going to get the first round bye games. So you could be ranked very high, but your seeding in the playoff is going to be lower. So with that said, Mark, let's dive right in. I got to be honest. I love what they've given us so far.
Love in which way who they think's going to win the conference championship and just how it all plays out with the current matchups that we're seeing, or just for this week's, because we know it's going to be different after the games get played the last week before the conference championship games played next week.
Well, okay, here's what I love is, now I'm old school. I come from the era that, the Pac-12 champion played the Big Ten champion. I come from the era that so-and-so played so-and-so, and depending on when you were ranked and all that's what they would crown potentially the national champion. They called it the BCS era. The BCS had its advantages of, metrics, computers, algorithms, or whatnot to try to truly put number 1 versus number 2. But then, there was a lot of complaining about it. Then that's when we came out with the 4-team playoff. And personally, I was never a fan of it. A lot of teams, if they lost a game or two very early in the year, they were out of it. Nothing really to play for. But now with this 12-team playoff and the format that it's in, you're looking at this. This is crazy. you have number 16, Arizona State, right now, where we sit today, because they're on top of the Big 12, technically. They're in, but they're ranked number 16. In years past, number 16 has no shot at a playoff. You have number 11, Boise State, has a first-round bye. They're one of the top 4 teams in, okay? And then you look at Clemson, as the first team out, which if they win this weekend and other dominoes fall, they jump in. Alabama, as bad of a season, and Crimson Tide fans are hating the season because they're so used to Nick Saban's success and all that, they're right back in the show as well. And what's another thing that's very notable, Texas A&M is ranked number 20 right now. But they technically control their own destiny. If they win against the Longhorns this weekend and win the SEC championship game, now a number 20 team from where we sit today gets in. I think this is great for college football. It's making us talk about it. It's making us have to think about so many different scenarios. I mean, it's nuts. I love it. You know, I almost feel like it's better than the NCAA tournament, because usually in the NCAA tournament for men's basketball, you're always arguing about maybe, you know, some of the last 4 or 5 teams in at the tail end of 68. We're talking about 12 spots, but right now, 12 spots. Guys, Tulane could still get in this. They're hovering with 2 losses on top of their conference. They could find their way in this. You know, we have so many scenarios right now, and I think it's great that it's this deep into the season. We're going into the last regular season week, rivalry week at that, of the season, and we have all these scenarios of teams that can make it in. I almost kind of feel as if making it into the playoff alone is an accomplishment, and then you have the work to do, you know? So I think this is great. I really do. What do you got, Mark?
Yeah, it's going to be a crazy week for sure. If anything was like this past weekend with the 3 losses from all the caliber teams of potentially making playoffs, losing, and still have a conference championship game to be played the following week. 2 weeks left doesn't seem like a lot, but there's a lot right on the line for all these teams, because a lot of stuff can easily change after this week or next week, depending on how they play out. There's for sure locks already, as you discussed. Oregon, the only way they are, I say, potentially on the outside looking in, and that's a small. If they lose this weekend to Washington, I believe is who they play, and then they lose to Ohio State in the Big Ten Conference Championship game, that's a maybe, but I don't see it happening. So I see Oregon winning this weekend and then going to the Conference Championship game, playing more than likely, or for sure, Ohio State in the Conference Championship game, going with it. They don't lose to Michigan, which I don't see that happening, because are they at Ohio State this year?
Well, let's make no mistake about it. Yes, it's in Columbus, but it's the game. And that game does not come easy. And you even have others, you know, Clemson, South Carolina. You know, the South Carolina, that rivalry is intense. How about what's going to happen in College Station? You thought it was a buzzsaw when Notre Dame went into College Station. And now you're going to have Texas, which they have not played that game in I don't know how many years, and now it's back. You have the Aggies and the Longhorns. I can't wait to see that. And then quietly, and I'm on alert, and I'm being very cautious with this. Notre Dame, USC. USC's 5 losses this year. USC entered the 4th quarter with leads in all 5 losses, and they lost all 5 games, I believe, by a touchdown or less. So this isn't a gimme for Notre Dame either from where they're sitting, because right now they're sitting and the 7 seed playing SMU. And if that were to hold, how great would it be to bring back the old Pony Express of the 80s, playing the Irish in a first-round game in South Bend, Indiana, and then the winner of that game, presumably if everything stayed the same, the Irish playing the Longhorns in the second round. Like, this is awesome. I just think this is awesome for college football in general. I mean, it really is. And I can't wait to see how the next week or two goes.
I got something for you. It's way back Wednesday time, George, and that is, I got a trivia question for you. That is, go ahead.
Uh-oh.
So my surprise, like I said, after you is this, way back Wednesday trivia. So you mentioned Notre Dame and USC playing each other this week to continue their rivalry going. So they, my question for you is, they've had 94 meetings total.
Yeah.
So, do you know by chance what the all-time series is? Who has the most wins in this series, if you know the record for that?
I don't know the record for that. I know Notre Dame is winning the rivalry. I know Notre Dame's winning the rivalry.
Give me a number.
I don't have the number. But can I give people a backstory on the rivalry? Newt Rockne.
Hold on.
Okay.
Just give me a number, please. I'm going to tell you what the series is at.
I have no clue.
Just guess.
I don't know. You said 94, so 54-40, or you know.
Well, that's a good guess. Notre Dame is leading 49-37 with 5 ties. So there you go.
Oh yeah, there was ties. Another cool thing to know about that rivalry, just on the side note, and I'll be quick about it, is back in the day, back in whatever it was, the 1920s or whatnot, college football is very East Coast biased. All the reporters were East Coast biased. I want to say that the furthest they would cover was probably no further west than probably University of Texas or Texas A&M probably. And even then that was a stretch, you know. And Newt Rockne, the legendary head coach at Notre Dame, always vowed to play the best teams in college football. And he kept hearing rumblings out of some really good team out of Southern California. And every time he really thought about going to play them, you know, media, people kept shooting it down like, you don't need to go waste your time with that or whatnot. So finally, he just got pissed off one day and said, you know what, I'm calling the coach down there. I'm loading up my train with all my players, and we're going to go down to Southern Cal to see how good these boys are. So, of course, with that train, there was another train full of media because a lot of the media would cover the Irish. And they went down to Southern California, and they played a great game. Notre Dame did win the first meeting between the two. But from that day, it was born. Notre Dame put Southern Cal on the map, and they played each other every year since. Unless there might have been, I don't know, maybe some time during World War II or World War I where maybe they didn't. But they play that game every year. It's a heated rivalry, but it's a respected rivalry, and I can't wait to see it again. But a lot of people don't know that about the history and tradition about college football. You know, in a lot of ways, Notre Dame did help put Southern Cal on the map, and really the West Coast and the Pac-12, because what happened was reporters were just like, oh shit, we have some really good football out here on the West Coast. So then people started staying out there. They're like, hey, let me just stay out here and live out here and cover some of these teams and see what's going on. And that's really kind of how, just like everything else, you know, college football started growing. So a little fun fact for everyone to know.
Fun fact Wednesday. But, yeah, like I was saying earlier, Notre Dame doesn't need to take a step back this week against USC to keep up and with being in the playoffs. It's going to be rocking for sure, like I said, in Aggie Land and College Station at Kyle Field. It's going to be loud, probably the loudest it's ever been for sure, and it's going to be a freaking heavyweight fight, I imagine. like you said, because A&M can still potentially make it into the playoffs, winning against Texas this weekend and going in and knocking off Georgia in the conference championship game, which is tough task to do, but they can do it, and they could definitely shake up a lot of things for sure if they end up going down that road and pulling it off.
Now, where I agree with the teams that they picked and even the slots that they picked them in, what I don't agree with is, okay, I like Notre Dame with SMU because the winner of that could potentially play Texas. I think that's awesome. Because let's say Notre Dame presumably gets by USC, then you play Notre Dame SMU. No guarantees Notre Dame gets by the Mustangs, but it doesn't matter whoever wins that game. How cool would it be to have Notre Dame playing Texas? And then let's just say SMU beats the Irish. How cool would it be to bring back the Southwest Conference and have SMU in a playoff game playing the Longhorns? But then on the other side of that, you have Indiana playing Penn State. Now, I'm not a fan of that because that's basically another Big Ten game that we're now getting in a playoff scenario, and the winner gets Miami. All things considered, I'm a homer. Let's just say Notre Dame goes and plays Texas, and let's just say the Irish could somehow get by the Longhorns. And then you get, I'll just go based off of the higher ranked team, Penn State playing Miami, which is another great game. Miami, Penn State, especially back from the old days. But how cool would it be to see Notre Dame and the U in the semifinals? I mean, this is ridiculous. Now, I get it. It's in all likelihood going to change. And then when you look at the 8-9 matchup, Georgia, Tennessee, I mean, again, another SEC game in the playoff. Personally, I like to mix match the teams from conferences more. I do like Arizona State, Ohio State. I think Ohio State probably has too much for them. In all likelihood, Ohio State would play Boise State, and again, too much for them. I think the road for Ohio State, where it sits right now, gets them pretty much in the semifinals. Oregon has the tougher road, even though they're ranked higher. Again, today, with what the rankings are today, and it's going to change in all likelihood, but Oregon's going to have to play the winner of Georgia, Tennessee, and that's not a cakewalk. As a matter of fact, Oregon might not even win that game. So there's a lot of interesting scenarios, and I keep saying it's going to change. It's going to change next week and even probably the week after that. So I can't wait to see what happens.
No, I'm with you. I don't like the conference matchup with two teams already. Like Tennessee and Georgia already played each other. I know teams are going to play each other again. I get that. But I would rather see Tennessee have to go to Penn State and Indiana to Georgia along those lines or something, like just to mix it up. Even like you're saying, it is going to change next week for sure, just because teams are going to lose, teams win. Georgia, in all likelihood, they could be sitting where Texas is at with the bye in the first week if they went out and win the conference championship game. And so Texas would fall back and be potentially where Georgia's at and hosting Tennessee. And so it's one of those – a lot's going to change in the next 2 weeks again before you officially have the playoff lock-in with the 12 teams.
But this is what I really like about this format that they moved to 12 is we even started talking about it last week and maybe even the week before. We started talking scenarios. And in the 14 playoff, we really didn't have those scenarios. We knew we had the top two or top three, and it always kind of seemed like coming towards the end of the year, we're talking about, okay, there's 3 or 4 teams at best battling for one position. And that was really the argument, which pretty much eliminated the rest of college football. Right now, we could go down to number 20th ranked Texas A&M that still has a shot at this. Or even I don't know where Tulane ended up being ranked, but even Tulane. So this is cool. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like this keeps
Tulane 17th.
Okay, so are you kidding me? We're talking about the 17th ranked team in the country and the number 20th team ranked in the country 2 weeks out from Selection Sunday, so to speak, that still have a shot at this. We didn't have that in years past. I love this.
Well, I was just watching a little bit ago. Even they're saying, I mean, it's a long shot, but I wouldn't rule it out. They're even saying the Gamecocks could possibly sneak in. Going with, they have to beat Clemson. Beating Clemson completely knocks them out of the playoff picture because Gamecocks are at 15th and Clemson's at 12th. So they play each other this weekend. So if Gamecocks can knock them off, depending on, they're going to need a lot of other stuff to happen to slide in, being with a 3-loss team to get into the playoffs. But it is crazy to know that in the past this would never have happened, but now with the expansion, it's like, okay, 4 teams is more than enough. There's never going to be a debate why this team can't make it in. But this year's been a perfect example because I truly feel there isn't been a true – Oregon's been playing great all year, and they're undefeated. But I just feel like in general this year, there's not – to me, I feel like there's been a true dominant powerhouse team. I mean, Ohio State's playing like they do every regular season, and so I just feel like this year's a perfect example. Expanding it makes sense because there's enough teams. Like you can make a case for all these teams. If they cut it out of 5-4, you say, well, any of these 5 teams could have been that 4th seed going into the playoffs, but now it's the 12. So it makes it fun, interesting, and just going to be a fun see if the committee actually gets it still right, or it's going to be a lot of griping as usual.
Well, another thing that's really helped is the NIL. The transfer portal has definitely helped. But notice how this year we're not hearing any gripes about the little guy getting in. Because this year, right now, where we sit, the little guy is Boise State, SMU, and Tulane. And where we sit today, 2 weeks from Selection Sunday, they all have a shot at this. If not two of the teams have a shot at this.
Well, let's remind you, SMU is not the little guy anymore because they are in the ACC. If you're looking at conference, you're looking at school-wise, I know what you're getting at. Yeah. But they are in a power conference now because they're in the ACC. So, but to look at Tulane, they're in a great conference, the American Athletic Conference. But yes, they're viewed as it's not a power conference. So they're very much in it. And Boise State being in the Mountain West for now until I think they eventually join the Pac-12, which is still, the whole thing is just another discussion for another show. But to answer your question, yeah, it's you have a lot of schools that would not have been considered with the 4-team playoff, and so, but here they are now with the possibility of 1 for sure, if not 2, depending on how everything plays out.
Yeah, and you're gonna have a lot of teams this weekend also jockeying for bowl games that are outside of the playoff. Like we're sitting here talking about the playoff, there's still a lot of great bowl games out there, and they're going to want to turn around and ruin people's seasons.
Yeah, as we discussed, like teams don't want to play anymore if they're not in the playoffs. So with the expansion, at least keeps some of the bigger schools or smaller schools engaged, playing competitively. And as I've always said that now with big schools with big names that are in the playoffs, their guys are going to sit out. And so those other playoff or bowl games are fun to watch. You're going to have fun matchups that you typically won't see necessarily, but it's bowl season around the corner, and it's going to be fun watching a lot of these schools just play, especially the seniors who work their butts off to play, who may not get looked at for the NFL or Canadian Football League or the XFL or whatever, all the other leagues now, but nonetheless, it's going to be fun, and it gives a chance for these freshmen who didn't get to play some playing time just to get acclimated for the next season. So, yeah, the bowl games may not be as enjoyable as they once were just because guys will sit out knowing if they get drafted high, if they're not going to be in the playoffs. So, but a lot of teams are going to play good football this week that are on the cusp of becoming bowl eligible, or if they're not going to be bowl eligible, the chance to ruin a team's season who is in the hunt to make the playoffs.
I mean, look at it this way. The Jayhawks are going to fight like hell to get into a bowl game. Deion Sanders already said, Shador, Travis Hunter, they're playing. They're going to play in their bowl game. You know, USC, are you telling me they're not going to try to knock off Notre Dame and derail their season? So it's going to be great. I think this whole thing is great so far from where I'm sitting.
No, that's what I was saying. Guys, there's a lot to be played this last week of the season, so their teams are going to theoretically should be playing their hearts out, whether they're in a bowl or not, depending on their circumstance. So looking at, like you said, USC, they're bowl eligible, but to them going to the Jimmy Kimmel Bowl of ABC, whatever, out there, to them it's nothing. I mean, yeah, it's a reward for winning 6 games to beat, but they're not in the playoffs, so these guys, the star players who are going to get drafted in the first, second round, are going to sit out of the bowl game. But this is their championship game this week against Notre Dame, so they could be a home record and try to go knock Notre Dame off and make it difficult for the committee to like, well, Notre Dame just lost. They don't play a conference. So just teams that are bowl eligible, but not like they're not going to playoffs, who are playing a team that is on the cusp of, depending on whether they can be in the conference championship game or as a large team. So a lot of good football to be played this weekend. That's going to have a lot of implication on how the committee looks at for the selection going forward.
Yeah, I agree. This is going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to see it. It's going to be great. And what's also great about it is even tonight, we have the Kansas Jayhawks playing the Duke Blue Devils, which is basketball royalty. Both teams are basketball royalty in a game right now. Thanksgiving Day, we have 3 great NFL games. Rivalry Saturday for college football, and then again, an NFL football this Sunday. I think this is going to be a great weekend. I can't wait to see all the games and just to see how everything gets shaken out.
Absolutely. So just looking at the rivalry, even if teams aren't good, they're going to play hard just because it's rivalry. Everyone gets up for a rivalry week. Like I said, even Michigan, who hasn't played well this season, are bowl eligible, but they're going to play hard against Ohio State and give them a fight as much as they can. So with all that, we'll see how this week wraps up with the rival week, and we'll see if Kansas holds on to beat the Duke Blue Devils here in basketball. And we'll reach out back to y'all next week to discuss where these teams lie for conference championship week and what teams could potentially be out and what teams are in. And so there, as always, we'll be sipping, and we will holler at you later. Go ahead.
Oh, my.
Yeah, you're good. Go.
I'm good. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, and hey, to all of our fans, look, we have a show coming next week. We're going to obviously keep digging more into the college football playoff and everything that's going on in the sports world. But a special reminder out there, we are actually going to put together a show that I think everyone's going to love. We're going to do it in December, and it is going to be about, and we're going to do it tournament style, right? Tournament style about the best Christmas movies of all time, and we're going to do it NCAA tournament style, so to speak, to have a Final Four and a national championship and all that. So I want everyone to tune in. It's going to be awesome. You're going to have my picks. You're going to have Mark's picks. You guys as the viewers are going to be making picks. I mean, it's going to be great. It's going to be great for something to change it up, especially during the month of December. So, you know, we all hope you tune in, and we're excited for it.
Yes. So look for that episode in December, like George Greek said. As we wrap this one up, everyone have a happy Thanksgiving. Stay safe out there. And as always, shoot us a message at theglasspodcast@gmail.com. As always, as George says, if you're going to get involved, be safe, be sipping, and look forward to chatting with y'all soon. Take care.